Who's your commander?
Good luck.
Equip.
Move to combat.
Resolves.
Now, before you attack
Does
me,
anyone have an answer?
well played.
Good game.
Hello friends, DJ here, and this is the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel. I'm excited to talk to you today about one of the new partner pairs from Commander 2020. We're going to take a look at a deck built around Brallin, SKYSHARK Rider, and his flying friend Shabraz the SKYSHARK. This partner pair is from Timeless Wisdom, the cycling deck, and it does really well at the helm of this deck, but we're going to mix it up a little bit. We're going to make this deck focus on wheels, rummaging, looting, draw, discard cards so quickly, pumping up Brallin and Shabraz, gaining life, dealing tons of damage. This deck is fun and powerful, and some of the power comes from its flexibility. Depending on which commander we have out, we can pivot into different strategies to take the best line of play and adapt to what our opponents are doing. Let's take a look at the commanders. Brallin SKYSHARK Rider is a 3/3 human shaman for 3 and a red who says, whenever you discard a card, put a +1/+1 counter on Brallin SKYSHARK Rider, and it deals 1 damage to each opponent. It also has the activated ability to pay 1 red to give target shark trample until end of turn. Brallin partners with Shabraz, the SKYSHARK, who is a 3/3 shark bird with flying for 3, a white and a blue. And whenever you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on Shabraz the SKYSHARK, and you gain 1 life. It also has an activated ability that costs either a white or a blue mana to give target human flying until end of turn. So with 2 different commanders, what does the deck as a whole look like? Well, both of our commanders benefit when we have effects that make us draw or discard, so we're going to be doing that a lot. Shabraz could also make this a Voltron strategy. Just a few ways to draw cards with Shabraz out, and it'll turn into a big flying threat dealing commander damage. I'd want to hit our opponent a couple of times in the early game, so they're worried about taking extra commander damage from Shabraz. Brallin gives Shabraz trample in addition to flying, so if we need to push damage through later in the game, it'll be very hard for our opponents to block. Finally, Brallin does direct damage to all of our opponents' faces, so we can take advantage of this by making this direct damage more potent. This doesn't count for commander damage and will draw the attention of all of our opponents at the same time, so this might be a strategy that we use if we're trying to end the game quickly. We also don't want our entire deck revolving around our commanders, so we want some other payoffs that synergize just as well. Let's start off by talking about the draw and discard. Wheels make each player discard their hand and draw 7. They're named Wheel for Wheel of Fortune, but that's a crazy expensive card, and there are a lot of other options nowadays. Magus the Wheel is a creature that sacrifices itself to have each player wheel. Echo of Eons can be flashback from the graveyard to wheel again, and Runehorn Hellkite is a 5/5 dragon that exiles itself from our graveyard to wheel. It's really nice to have these abilities that work in our graveyard because we're naturally going to be discarding so many cards. Windfall effects cause each player to discard their hand and draw cards equal to the most a player discarded this way. Jace's Archivist is really fun and powerful because it allows us to do this every single turn for just 1 blue mana. Both Wheels and Windfall effects are powerful, but they might give our opponents card advantage too, so we'll look at some cards next that just affect us. Chandra Flamecaller, Heartwarming Redemption, Vanish into Memory. We'll use just a bunch of cards like these to let us only discard our hand and draw as many cards as we discarded. If we can keep Chandra around, she lets us do this almost every turn. And most of the times these effects don't count the card being played, so we're down 1. But Heartwarming Redemption draws an extra card to balance out and gains us some life. We have several more of these effects, including Forgotten Creation and Tolarian Winds. One card that I really like is Vanish into Memory. It's an instant for 2 white-blue that lets us temporarily exile a creature. When it leaves, we draw cards equal to its power, and when it returns, on our next upkeep, we discard cards equal to its toughness. Not only does this draw and discard us potentially a lot of cards, but we can temporarily get rid of an opponent's huge creature, or we can even use this on our own creature to save it. There are a lot of powerful looting and rummaging effects, but I want to take a look at the Royal Scions, Bag of Holding, and Compulsion. The Royal Scions lets us loot once each turn. They can also pump up our creatures, give them first strike and trample, and when we have a Voltron strategy, that can really help us push through damage. Bag of Holding lets us loot for 2 mana, which is but more importantly, it saves up all the cards that we discard and gives us a way to access them later if we need them. Sometimes when we discard our whole hand, we get rid of something we really need, so Bag of Holding can help hold that important card to get back later. Compulsion is a repeatable rummage effect on an enchantment, and it can replace itself, so really a solid player in a deck like this. One more thing to a draw and discard engine I have to talk about is Nezahal Primal Tide. This giant dinosaur will draw us a card each time our opponents play a non-creature spell, and it's almost impossible to kill because we can always discard 3 cards to exile it and have it return again later. But this ability has a rules quirk that helps us out. We can pay that discard cost as many times as we want before Nezahal goes away. So with Brallin out, we can just discard tons and tons of cards to try and kill all of our opponents. It's kind of an all-in move when you're discarding your resources to deal damage, but that's the kind of strategy that closes out games. And Nezahal is the kind of dinosaur that draws us enough cards to be able to do that. Shabraz doesn't need a lot of help to become a huge Voltron threat. 1 or 2 wheels of our hand and Shabraz can easily be smacking in for lethal flying commander damage in just 1 or 2 hits. But what it needs is a way to protect it. Our opponents can hold up a Swords to Plowshares or Beasts Within or whatever in case we attack them, and then boom, we've got a dead shark. The best Voltron strategies have built-in protection and Shabraz doesn't, so we need to make sure we build in that protection to our deck. We're going to run a few counterspells and a few equipment to help this out. Arcane Denial, Dovin's Veto, Fierce Guardianship. Arcane Denial is a 2-mana counterspell that draws us a card. Yeah, it has the downside of drawing our opponents 2 cards, but it replaces ourselves so that we're not down on tempo. Dovin's Veto counters a non-creature spell, and that can't be countered. And the new Fierce Guardianship is potentially a free negate if we have our commander out. These free spells, if you control your commander, are really good with partner commanders, since we're more likely to have one of them on the battlefield. It's pretty pricey right now though, so if you didn't pick up a pre-constructed deck, don't worry about it, like a Swan Song or a Negate will do just fine. The classic equipments of Swiftfoot Boots and Lightning Greaves are great. Throw them on whatever, give them haste, protect them. But I did want to add Nurok's Stealth Suit to that lineup. It doesn't give us haste, but it can be equipped at instant speed for 2 mana. It's like having a counterspell for single target removal for any of our creatures. So if we have both our commanders out, and a Stealth Suit can essentially attack both of them with just a single piece of equipment. And then finally, Boros Charm is just really good because it can protect, but also it can give double strike, which is the kind of effect that can take a player out of a game. Brallin's direct damage ability is pretty powerful, but we can make it even more powerful with cards like Corrupted Conscience and Grafted Exoskeleton. Corrupted Conscience is a 5-mana sorcery that lets us steal an opponent's creature and give it Infect. But we can also play it on our own Brallin, which means that he only needs to do 10 damage to each opponent to kill the whole table. Similarly, Grafted Exoskeleton is an equipment that gives one of our creatures +2/+2 and Infect. This synergizes really well because it goes along with our Voltron strategy and our Brallin direct damage strategy together. And Infect is pretty fun and pretty mean. Torbrand, Thane of Redfell, and Glinthorn Buccaneer. Torbrand costs 1 and 3 red for a 2/4 that makes all of our red sources deal 2 more damage. So Brallin does 3 damage each time we discard a card instead of 1. Yeah, that's pretty powerful. The only thing I'm sad about is that our SKYSHARK isn't red, so it doesn't get our Torbrand boost. Glinthorn Buccaneer also deals our opponents a damage when we discard, doubling up Brallin's damage. Finally, let's talk about a couple other cards that combo with Brallin. It's Curiosity and Ophidian Eye. They're both enchantments that say, whenever enchanted creature deals damage to a player, draw a card. Notice it just says damage, not combat damage. So that means that Brallin's ping ability will draw us a card. So with 3 players out, Brallin will draw us 3 cards because he did 3 damage, 1 to each player. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Then at the end of the turn, if we need to discard a hand size, he'll do even more damage to our opponents. This means that we can potentially draw, discard, deal damage, and repeat until we win the game. If you like this effect and want more, there's another card with the same thing, and that's Tandem Lookout. All right, let's talk about a few more cards that synergize with the core of this deck. Hoofprints of the Stag is an enchantment that gets hoofprint counters. Interesting. For each card we draw, which means it's going to have a bajillion hoofprint counters on it because we're drawing like crazy. Then you can pay 2 and a white to remove 4 counters to make a 4/4 flying elemental. Ominous Seas is very similar. You get a 4 shadow counter whenever we draw a card, and then we can remove 8 of them to get an 8/8 Kraken. And the Locust God just makes 1/1 insects with flying and haste every time we draw a card. Yeah, the Locust God is a little bit better than these other ones. But really, all of these cards basically weaponize the card draw that we have built into this deck. It's very good. Then we have Surly Badgersaur and Shark Typhoon. Surly Badgersaur gets us rewards for discarding cards. You either get a +1/+1 counter, make a treasure, fight a creature, depending upon what kind of card we discard. So this spiky friend acts as a ramp, removal, whatever we need. And our deck is about half non-creature spells, so we could theoretically make even more sharks with the enchantment Shark Typhoon. But of course, we can always discard it to make a flying shark ourselves. We definitely want to make sure to have enough sharks in this deck so that we can give them trample with Brallin. So how does this deck play? Well, we're going to start off ramping, maybe doing a little bit of card selection before our commanders hit the battlefield. We have a lot of 2-mana ramp in here because we want the option of getting Brallin out on turn 3. Don't be afraid to use some loot effects or even wheels before our commanders hit the battlefield. We want to be playing something all the time and sculpting our hand. Then essentially we have a decision point. We have to look at the battlefield and say, do I want to play Brallin or Shabraz? Maybe we draw a few combo pieces for Brallin and that's the way we want to take the game. Or maybe we start off with some protection pieces for Shabraz, and so we want to get some commander damage in early. When deciding which commander to deploy, you're also going to want to look at your table. To be honest, when you play people at first, they're really going to underestimate these guys because they're like, oh, it's the flying shark dude and whatever. Like, they're going to think it's a joke because these cards are a little bit funny. And so you're going to be able to take them by surprise and smash them with a shark and combo out with Brallin or do tons and tons of damage. But you know, if Brallin comes down early and starts dealing damage to everyone, like ping, 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 people will realize the potential that Brallin has, and so it might scare the table. Shabraz might be less threatening in the early game because it's just a flying shark. You know, people aren't usually scared of combat in our format, but then as we start stacking up damage against players, they're going to get more and more scared of Shabraz, which actually means they have to be scared of both commanders in this deck because it's so powerful. Really what we want to do is balance the threat assessment at the table and then try to find ways to sneak through shark commander damage with Shabraz or deal enough damage with Brallin or have the combo pieces there to be able to close out the game. Really, this deck has so many different ways to play and different ways to win every game. It really makes it exciting to play over and over again. I want to start off by thanking Jevin. He's the brains behind this deck. You can follow him on Twitter at Jevin_MTG. Read his articles on EDH Rec. Thanks, man. This deck is so much fun. And I also want to thank Cool Stuff Inc. They're the sponsor of the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel. And if you use the coupon code JUMBO5, you can get 5% off your order. I also want to thank my patrons. They support me every single day. Thank you so much, patrons. And thank you for watching this video. I can't wait to... Well, I guess now we're on to Core 2021. Man, things are going so fast. I can't go back to Icorian Commander. Just keep moving forward with more videos. And that's what I'll do. All right, everyone. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.